Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a new real-life car review. In this episode I'm driving the all-new Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. If you had asked me 2 years ago will there be a 5th generation of Toyota Prius, I would have guessed no. Reason being that the current lineup, every important model is available as a hybrid and every model looks great, drives well, is super reliable and above all has great fuel economy. And what would a new generation of Prius add, I wondered? That would require expensive materials like carbon fiber, aluminium and expensive modifications to the drivetrain to make it even more efficient than, let's say, a Toyota Yaris hybrid. I got my record fuel economy, it was 28 kilometers a liter in a Toyota Yaris, and I figured, it would be an expensive car to achieve that much fuel economy like the outgoing Prius models have done. I mean, the Prius paved the way for hybrid technology worldwide, in my opinion. And yeah, the current lineup is so efficient, what would a Prius add? And besides that, it wasn't especially lucrative. And then last year they introduced this. And look at it. I mean, it's a drop-dead gorgeous car. It's the rake, this line, starting from the front, goes all the way up, and only over here, just above the heads of the rear passengers, it starts to slope down. You have this typical cam tail. Yeah, it really is a Prius, but my God, it's a gorgeous car. But besides making this a good looking car, the Toyota engineers have put a lot of effort in improving the efficiency of this car, starting with the drivetrain. Now, as I mentioned earlier, every important model over here is available as a hybrid, and they want to create a business case for the Prius, so Toyota decided they would only sell the Prius, the new 5th generation Prius, as a plug-in hybrid over here. Let's start with a peek under the hood. And in all honesty, this is my very first peek under the hood. We have no hood struts. There is this hood prop. So this is the 5th generation of Toyota's hybrid powertrain. It's a 2-liter engine, 4-cylinder. It operates an Atkinson cycle, and Atkinson cycle means that the intake valve stays open during the compression stroke and closes halfway the compression stroke. You push out some air, but you also reduce the pumping losses of the engine, gaining efficiency. You lose 20% over here, but you gain 35% anywhere else, so that's easy money. It's the hybrid powertrain, this being the plug-in hybrid. The regular version get an 83 kilowatt engine, I believe it's 111 horsepower electric motor, I must say, and this one has a 160 horsepower motor. It has a 13.6 kilowatt battery living in the trunk, and as a plug-in hybrid the combined system output is 220 horsepower, which is a impressive number for a Prius. Now, as usual, I have a peek around. There are a lot of cables and lines and coolant reservoirs over here. Toyota and Lexus could do a better job with it on the bonnet design, but usually you don't have a peek over here. And what you do notice, it seems very packed to the brim, but also the line of the hood is very low, so the top of the valve cover is less than 10 centimeters under the skin, on the inside skin of the hood. Yeah, nothing much special to see here. Super reliable technology. I'm very curious to see what the fuel consumption of this car is. And also the Toyota engineers made great improvements to the suspension setup. The Prius 5 is based on the 2nd generation of Toyota's global architecture C platform, and I'm really curious as to see how this car drives and behaves. They said they want this to be a real driver's car to match the looks of the car. But before we go off on a drive, you'll have a peek in the trunk and the interior. Now, before we have a peek in the trunk, I must say there are 3 versions available. The Dynamic line, the Executive line, which is this car, and there is a Solar Edition. The Solar Edition has solar cells in the roof, and that car can charge itself. It's said that it can achieve up to 1250 kilometers of charge just by sitting in the sun, and that equals 770 miles. That's all free range thanks to the solar cells in the roof. This car does have an electric trunk opener. Not sure if the base version, the dynamic line, has that. There's this nice basket over here with a charging cable and the charger for your wall outlet, for the 230 volt outlets. And yeah, the downside of having a plug-in is that the batteries live here underneath the cargo floor, so that's raised up quite a bit, and yeah, the cargo space isn't all that large. I'll blink in the numbers over here, and of course the numbers of the regular hybrid version, but yeah, we don't get that over here. This has one of those super lightweight, super handy parcel shelves which folds. Then you have a compact one, and yeah, you can stow it there. But over here, this is one of the downsides of this design and this motorization, that yeah, you lose some practicality. So let's throw everything back in and have a look in the interior. Hi, Arnold from the future here. There is one thing I didn't point out, but I found I needed to show you. Now, if you have a close-up look, car has gotten dirty. I mean, it's autumn, the roads are muddy and all, but this car, despite it not having a windscreen wiper, has a completely clean rear windscreen. The aerodynamics are so well designed that when you're doing over 60 kilometers an hour, the airflow over the rear window keeps it completely clean. And look at this part over here, that's dirty. But the rear window is clean despite it not having a rear wiper. If you're doing anything slower than 60 km an hour, you can also use the rear view camera, which is this one. This is the backup camera. This is the rear view camera. Let's hop inside, because this car has a digital rear view mirror. This is the normal view you have in the mirror, and you can see that rear windscreen is quite tiny, and this is the rear view camera, and that's a nice thing to have in this car. Well, when you get in the new Prius, you can tell you have to pull your head in a little bit. The roofline is low. The car is 143 centimeters high, so that's 7 centimeters lower than the current generation of Yaris is. Having a peek in this interior, well, for me as a Prius driver it looks quite familiar, but it's a all typical Toyota. It's yeah, what you see in the current generation of Toyotas, it looks all familiar, but what makes it typical Prius is the fact that the gauge cluster is positioned at the base of the window. That's something the first 4 generations of the Prius also had. It's the familiar Toyota Lexus infotainment system, works great. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay are there. I'm not sure if they're both wireless. I'll blink that in screen. Oh yeah, and speaking about wireless, over here is a pocket for your smartphone, and in the US models, the higher trim levels have a wireless charger over here. And because of European legislation for type approval, they don't allow for a wireless charger to be mounted vertically. It's my understanding. So this does not have a wireless charger. It does not have that over here, but they expect to introduce a wireless charger in this pocket over here, in the same system as you have in the Lexus NX and the RX models. There is a cover over here with a small hidden compartment. This is somewhat of a flimsy plastic cover. And speaking about flimsy plastics, the side panels of this center cluster are also a bit cheap and flimsy. That's very reminiscent of our generation 2 Prius. But all in all, ergonomics, there is room for improvement. I have no issues with the buttons on the steering wheel. It's the same as in the Subaru Solterra / the Toyota BZ4X. There are physical buttons for the HVAC controls. This is great. The button for the heated steering wheel is a bit hidden. The biggest problem I have is with this cluster with the gear selector, and here is a cluster of buttons for the drive mode, EV, hybrid, and you can force it into charge mode, and also the hold function for the brake is over here. You really have to pull your arm back to reach these buttons, and during driving it's a bit inconvenient to do. Yeah, just with this section over here was 10 centimeters more forward. I would think that is a bit more convenient. But other than that, there are no complaints. This is a familiar system, it works fast, raises no questions. Sound quality is decent. This has the standard audio system, which is a bit bass heavy. When you turn up the volume, the bass and the lower frequencies get over amplified, and it's a bit exhausting to listen to, so usually I leave that off. Seats themselves are great. This version comes with cloth upholstery, which I like very much, especially during the winter months. It has heated seats, of course. It does not have ventilated seats. You get the synthetic leather seats of the higher trim level to have seat ventilation. But the seats themselves are fairly comfortable. I read some critique over the length of the seat itself. That could be a bit longer, but for me, I'm 173. This is no problem. And it also has electric adjusters, and you can tilt the seat itself, and I think that's a very nice thing to have. Well, let's hop over to the back and see what the space for the rear occupants is like. The ingress in the rear is a bit easier than in the front. Seating position is good. It's not ideal if you have kids that'll reach puberty soon and you expect them to shoot up in height. Well, this may not be the car for you. There is plenty of legroom. I have a lot of knee room with the seat in my driving position, and I can stow my feet under the driver's seat. There is not much luxury over here. Some reading lights, there are USB-C outlets, and in the armrest 2 cup holders, and nothing fancy here. Yeah, adults can sit for a couple of hours over here, but if you're any taller than me, and I'm 173 meters, I blink in the translation in screen, this might not be a fun place to be. Do the window test. But view towards the outside is great. That has a lot to do with the length of this window and that this line, the window base, isn't all too high. Yeah, I could live with this, but it's not ideal for adults and kids hitting puberty. Okay, now before I start the car, there's one thing I want to note, because push the brake, press the power button, car starts. Now what happens oftentimes when you want to select a gear, when the car is on, it warns you to push the brake while you already have the brake pressed in. Let's see what happens now. Now let's select D. What happens often is that you have to press the brake really hard before you can select a gear. So that's a bit annoying. But anyway, setting off in a new Prius plug-in hybrid. Starts off in electric mode. Currently it shows my power consumption. It's 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. That isn't great, but for a plug-in hybrid it's good. But let me switch to hybrid mode. Here comes the good news. My fuel consumption, my overall fuel consumption is 3.7 liters per 100 kilometers. So that's really great, and that's a new record for me. And I didn't put any effort in, get back to that later, and I didn't put any effort in driving as fuel economical as possible. Now that beep you heard is the mandatory speed limit warning. Let me switch that off. You can do that on the fly. And there we are, we have it switched off. That's a dumb thing in my opinion. It's not a manufacturer's fault. It's just a matter of politics, it's legislation. And when you're doing 1 kilometer an hour over the speed limit, that thing starts to beep all the time. Luckily, you can switch it off during driving. You have to do that every time. Same goes for the lane departure warning, but you can switch it off during driving. So I've been driving for 5 days now in this car, and well, one of the downsides of this beautiful design is well, you have less interior room, especially headroom for me personally. It isn't much of a problem, but when you're any taller, you'll notice it, especially during ingress and egress. And another thing is the shape of these A-pillars. They're really blocking your view when you're approaching an intersection, and they completely block the view to smaller oncoming traffic or crossing traffic. It's oftentimes the case when you share the road with bicyclists and they're on the crossing road. Really have to lean forward and look past the A-pillars to see what's coming on the crossroads. Same goes for our own Prius. So you have to adjust to that. but when you do a lot of in-town driving with this car and you share the road with smaller road users like bicyclists, motorcyclists or smaller cars, that's something you have to keep in mind. However, this car does have the rear of the crossing traffic radar. It also has a rear crossing traffic radar that warns you, but that's not something you want to rely on to avoid accidents. You have to be able to trust your eyes and your vision. And yeah, those A-pillars are somewhat in the way, so that's something to keep in mind. Another thing when we're talking about negatives is the instrument cluster. The information in this cluster, in this screen, is very cluttered. It's easy to read the speed, thank God, but things like the state of charge indicator and the fuel meter, yeah, they are a bit hard to read. And Toyota stuffs a lot of small icons in there. I just switched off the traffic sign recognition system, so there's a separate icon for that. And there is an icon for the lane departure warning and a lot of other things. And yeah, when you're looking for that kind of information, this screen is a bit hard to read. Also, you can get used to this, but Hyundai and Kia do a much better job at that. Now the infotainment screen is completely trouble-free to use. I have no problems with that. It's easy to switch off. I have it set to night colors because the day colors are a bit too bright for my liking. Currently we're driving into a forested area and that screen can be a bit too bright, and also have that screen toned down completely. Oh, and there's one thing that I also should mention, something to do with the rake of the window and the A-pillars. And I'm not sure it's completely down to that, but I'm having somewhat difficulty to guess the width of the car and to determine my position on the road. Now we have a lot of narrow roads here, and despite the fact I hold my commercial driving license and I've driven semi-tractor trailers and big rigs for, well, almost 10 years, I never had any trouble with the size of those vehicles, especially in terms of width on narrower roads. And in this car, I have the feeling I have a little bit more difficulty of estimating the width of the car. Now that can be just me, but if you're sensitive to that, that's something you have to keep in mind, and it's something to try out for yourself on a test drive. Alrighty folks, here are some nice curvy back roads. Let's see if we can have a little bit of fun over here. Nice curvy roads. I mean, with 220 horsepower, this car is more than powerful enough for most drivers. You don't even need that much horsepower to have some fun, but oh man, look at this. A little bit over the speed limit. This is so engaging to drive. Car stays planted, is stable, there isn't much body roll. You can see the ideal line in the curves, hit the apex. It's so easy, it's so effortless. Still have great fuel economy and I have so much fun. But man, is this car fun to drive. Yeah. There are some negatives to this car, which I thought would be a letdown for me. But then you end up in a situation like this, and you're having so much fun. Oh, there's a nice jump over here. Let's try this one. Car stays planted. Fantastic. Yeah, this is super impressive. And everything is so smooth and so effortless. And that's one of the big pros of the Toyota Hybrid Synergy Drive, currently in its 5th generation. The way the combustion engine and the electric motors cooperate, it's all so seamless, so effortless. Yeah, this truly is the best hybrid powertrain, without a doubt. Well folks, I think I have discussed all my talking points. Let's head over to the middle of nowhere where I'll give you my final thoughts on the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. Well folks, you know what they say, if it looks well, it flies well, and that's most definitely true for the new Toyota Prius. Like I said in the beginning, I did not expect for Toyota to launch a 5th generation of the Prius with all other models in their lineup being available as a hybrid, with great fuel efficiency, with great practicality and also fun to drive cars. I didn't see a business case for a Prius, and yet here we are. Just by simply reconsidering and redesigning the aerodynamic shape, you had a gorgeous looking car, whereas the prior generations were somewhat odd looking cars, and they added the driving characteristics to it, and with the tweaks they made to the drivetrain, I didn't go all too much into detail on that. Yeah, you get a good looking car, great performance, it's fun to drive, it's engaging to drive, so I tip my hat to the Toyota engineers that made this happen. There are a few things to consider when you're interested in this car, and that's the visibility along the A-pillars, the somewhat, I wouldn't say poor ergonomics, but there's room for improvement in the ergonomics, and like I mentioned in the drive segment, I every now and then have some issues with the overview of the car down to its window line, and yeah, the visibility of the entire bodywork. That's something you have to keep in mind when you're interested in buying this car. Now, coming to the fact that this is only available as a plug-in hybrid over here, I think there is a business case for the regular hybrid version. By shaving off the extra pounds that the additional larger battery brings and having a more practical cargo space, I think they could sell a lot of these cars over here in Europe, but that's not a problem of this plug-in hybrid. That's something for the marketing department of the Toyota importers. Anyway, I'm very impressed with this car. I did not discuss the prices. Prices start at around in about 45,000 euros for the dynamic line. The executive line, comes in at just over 47,000 euro, and the top trim level, the solar edition, yeah, I had to think it, the solar edition comes in just over 52,500 euros. So these are substantial prices, and that's also the reason why I think the regular hybrid version would be a bit cheaper. That also would have a good business case over here. Usually you had a Prius, yeah, you had an odd look and great practicality, but now you have a drop dead gorgeous car, and yeah, if you don't mind the practical limitations and some ergonomic issues, I think there are a lot of people wanting this car. Now with that, I want to end this real life car review. I hope you liked following me along. If you did, subscribe to the channel, give me a like, maybe leave a comment, and also if you want to help out the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. I'll leave the link down below in the description. And for now, I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!